Welcome to Immaterial World,
a dedicated and transparent space to recenter how we explore glamour, magic, culture, and everything else we love together.
Immaterial world, come meet me in the immaterial world. As far as the galaxy goes, we're flying in the immaterial world. Immaterial world, come meet me in the immaterial world. With mind and body and soul, we're flying in the immaterial world. The immaterial world.
Coby Michael is an occult herbalist and plant medicine practitioner specializing in poisonous and psychoactive plants, particularly for their magical and spiritual properties. He is the owner of the Poisoner's Apothecary, a blog and online shop where he makes a wide array of formulas working with plants like deadly nightshade and fly agaric mushroom. Coby creates ritual formulas and talismanic jewelry inspired by poisonous plants and their use in witchcraft and ceremony. He writes prolifically and teaches workshops on the poison path, flying ointments, occult herbalism, and psychedelic spirituality.
Coby has a background in religious studies, traditional witchcraft, North American folk magic, and phytochemistry. He is also the host and creator of Botanica Obscura Conference, an annual gathering of magical plant practitioners from around the world sharing their plant spirit knowledge.
The Botanica Obscura Conference is celebrating its 5th anniversary this year and being held digitally from March 6th to 8th. It's a gathering of herbalists, plant medicine practitioners, green witches, alchemists, botanists, and other plant-passionate people from around the world, seeking to connect with people and plants and facilitate community and resource sharing between plant practitioners of all kinds. All presentations are live and recorded. Tickets are available via the link in our show notes, and I will be presenting on Romani folk family herbalism, talking about herbalism in my family with a special focus on weeds and plants of resistance. And my presentation will be on March 6th at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Even if you can't make it live, if you get a ticket, either a day pass or a pass for the whole weekend, you get to watch the recordings later. So, why wouldn't you? And I hope to see you there.
I am famously not comfortable with plants and desperate to be so. I am a bona fide city girl. I am a friend, though, of what one might classify as entheogens, and I'm going to ask our guest how to pronounce that, but I'm talking about magic mushrooms. I'm very familiar with those. So I'm going to ask him if that counts. I'm working through my own personal fears around doing plants wrong, like really feeling so overwhelmed after decades of city living, but through a little guidance and a lot of curiosity and what I know will be some more unlocks today after our conversation with Coby Michael, I am getting closer to my farm life witch dreams. Coby, welcome. I have so many questions for you.
Hey, thank you. I'm excited to be here. I think I might be the perfect person to answer them too.
Okay. First of all, tell me, how do I pronounce this word?
So the word,
entheogens?
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, perfect.
Entheogen.
Are we going to say that magic mushrooms count in that category, or are we going to break it down a little bit more?
No, definitely. So magic mushrooms and psychedelic fungi are part of the family of, I guess we could say, substances known as entheogens.
Perfect. Okay, so I am a little bit more familiar than I thought I was. So excited. We're going to unlock it more today. Coby, tell us a little bit about your personal journey that led us here. How did you become a practitioner of occult herbalism? And also, what does that even mean?
That is a really good question. So plants have been part of my life since I was a really young child. I grew up in the garden with my grandparents. My grandfather was a part of a long line of farmers and gardeners. And so spending time out in the yard and planting and growing things was a big part of my upbringing. So I always felt a really kind of intimate connection to the natural world in that respect. And just like a sense of peace and safety and happiness kind of being out and about and around all of the little plants. So even before I guess I started my spiritual journey, felt this connection to the natural world. So yeah, that goes way, way, way back into my childhood. And then it just kind of blossomed into what it is today with my work in occult herbalism. So I call myself an occult herbalist, basically to distinguish myself from like clinical herbalism. So I'm not like a practicing herbalist treating people with various conditions or suggesting herbs for people to take for health or wellness. While I do have a background in that, it's not my main focus. So I focus more on the ritual, ceremonial, and spiritual uses of plants and, of course, fungi in more of a magical context.
This makes me so happy. I just love talking about plants. So, how can herbs support someone's spiritual practice, especially if they're brand new to the territory, whether that's alternative spiritual practice or herbs or both? And what are the types of poisonous plants that one might work with? In your book, The Poison Path Herbal, you mentioned baneful plants, entheogens, and plant spirit allies. So we would love you to walk us through what these are and how do we hang out with them?
Okay, so try to give like an in the nutshell kind of an answer to that question. So in animistic belief systems, the belief that everything has a spirit and a consciousness, plants are part of that cosmology. So we see them as independent points of consciousness that we're able to connect with, just like we would, a person walking down the street, or, maybe working with a specific deity or a specific energy. We're able to connect with that consciousness. So plants are innately spiritual because they contain a spirit and a consciousness, and we're able to connect with that to receive, information, knowledge, insight, healing, all sorts of different things. So plants are basically like these little antennae that are picking up the energy of the universe and kind of transmuting it in various different ways at any given time. When we think about them as being like exposed to the elements and the environment, the different things happening in the solar system, astrologically, plants are sort of the physical manifestation of all of these different energies. And we as humans that like to kind of categorize everything and organize everything into its own different category have done that with plants for thousands of years. And so we've got different categories of plants that are known for treating different types of diseases, curing different things, and they all fall into these different categories known as correspondences. And then the correspondences branch out into other associated areas like planetary correspondence, elemental correspondence, and that gives us an idea of that plant's particular energy and personality, and also connects to its medicinal action as well. So we're able to kind of tap into this secret language that exists in nature through our plant allies and through the spirits that inhabit them. And through that, we can incorporate them into our magical practices, our rituals. We can partner with them in our own healing journey. So beyond the plant's physical characteristics and its chemical compounds, there is this spiritual quality to that too. And when we are able to kind of bring all of that together, it can have some really, really profound and exciting results when it comes to partnering with plants in a more conscious kind of a way.
Okay, that is so helpful because I worked with an evolutionary astrologer over the summer who, as we were breaking down certain transits that I was going through or that I would be moving through, recommended plant allies and floral remedies specific to the assistance that she thought that I would need, especially with support for self-trust and grief work, a lot of like eighth house stuff specifically, if you're into astrology. So I found this really enlightening in how plants can help us move through some of the different healing modalities. And, you were talking about spiritual allies. And for me in particular, it was working with Chiron or working with Uranus disruptions. So there was a lot of really specific plant pairings that she was talking about. So for someone as green, as me, where do we start with tapping into what herbalism could offer, especially if we're already working with divination or healing modalities or astrology, or even for people that just do full moon manifesting and they like to journal? What sort of herbs would you say that a beginner could start with?
Of course, there's going to be, like your general health herbs, or what I refer to as like tonic herbs. So kind of think of things that you would find in the tea aisle at the grocery store. Stuff like lavender, lemon balm, chamomile, rose, stuff that's going to be gentle and generally supportive, for overall health, things that are going to be safe for, the broadest spectrum of people, that can be safely taken on a regular basis without any issues of contraindications. I think those would kind of be the things to start with if you're brand new to working with herbs. I think that the majority of people have probably had an herbal tea or encountered herbs in some way, with the fact that we use them to season our foods, and they're just kind of already all around us. So you've probably already had some kind of an encounter with an herb, but those general tonic herbs are going to be the safest to work with across the board. Now, in reference to the flower essences and the floral remedies that Jess was talking about with the astrological pairing, those are going to be safe for anyone to work with because flower essences are what we call vibrational remedies. So they're kind of similar to homeopathic remedies, but they're a little bit different in that flower essences are purely energetic formulations. So they don't actually contain any kind of therapeutic dose of plant material. So that makes them really helpful specifically for any kind of like energetic work or mental, emotional, spiritual pursuits. They're not going to be physically medicinal. So like a flower essence isn't going to cure a cold or make your headache go away or help your digestive system. They're purely vibrational and energetic. So this quality makes them really, really helpful for long-term working, incorporating them into like meditation, shadow work, journeying, all of those things on the more like metaphysical end of the spectrum when it comes to our healing journeys. So because flower essences are purely energetic formulations, they're also a really safe way to work with some of the more poisonous or toxic plants out there. So plants that we would in clinical herbalism refer to as low dose herbs. So these would be things like deadly nightshade, aconite, hemlock, herbs that in their physical form would be very risky for us to consume. In their energetic and flower essence form are completely safe to work with because they don't actually contain those chemical compounds that can make a plant potentially toxic. If that makes sense.
Yes. Yeah. I'm so glad that you mentioned too that we already work with herbs all the time when we're seasoning our food or drinking tea. And so even if people are like, oh man, I want to get into herbalism, but I'm so overwhelmed. It's like if you're intentionally using that basil, you're already doing it. But I know that Jess has some questions about the poison path.
Yes, I mean, I remember hemlock from reading Romeo and Juliet back in school. But I mean, when you say poison, that has such a specific connotation and it really evokes a very specific feeling, that word. So, especially for people like me that aren't as familiar with the plant world, poison feels like a toxin. It feels like an agent of destruction. What does it mean to be on the poison path or to work with poisonous plants? And how can we do that in a safe way?
Yeah, poison really does evoke a very specific and oftentimes like dramatic kind of reaction. And just in the linguistics of the word poison and what we've come to associate that word with over the years, it is a really, really interesting concept to kind of sit with and contemplate and look at, from poison being used to refer to specific plants that may have a toxic or potentially lethal effect, to poison being an adjective used to refer to toxic people or toxic situations. So it's
I love
something.
that. I love that so much. Amazing.
Yeah, it gets applied. It gets applied to a lot of different things in a lot of different ways, and that's something that's been really interesting for me as part of my journey on the poison path, is looking at this concept of poison and toxin and venom and what this actually means and implies, and the different ways that it's been used in different time periods and various different languages and just all of the different little connotations that are out there. So poison is very much this blanket term that gets applied to, a wide variety of plants with really, really dramatically different effects. So you think of like poison ivy versus poison hemlock. Poison ivy, when you come into contact with that, it may cause rash or irritation. Poison hemlock, very, very different. Coming into contact with that, could potentially kill you. It's the herb that was used to execute Socrates. Pops up in Shakespeare, who had a love for the literary use of poisonous plants because they are so dramatic. So we see it pop up all over, throughout culture and religion and ways that we kind of express different things. So when it comes to plants and herbs and fungi, it kind of acts as a red flag to tell us that, it's something that warrants a closer look. So really coming to understand plants on an individual basis as far as what their herbal actions actually are and how to work with that plant safely, through its individual characteristics. So not all plants are going to act the same. We could even look at something as innocuous as chamomile, in the wrong circumstances. For instance, if you're taking blood thinners, can be very dangerous. So that's not an herb that we typically associate with being poisonous, but in the right context, it can be very dangerous on that individual basis. Same thing with mugwort. It's a really, really popular herb for divination and full moon workings, and people will burn it as incense and drink it as tea or put it in their baths. But if you're pregnant or nursing or trying to become pregnant, it can potentially act in a way that would be very detrimental and in some ways, potentially poisonous. So it's all about context. It's all about the individual plants and their individual constituents. And that's really what the poison path has kind of become about for me, is really sort of understanding the nuance that exists within this umbrella of poison. And that doesn't just apply to plants, but it also applies to, more metaphysical concepts, energetics, different spiritual, psychic energies, metaphor. So it's really kind of a rabbit hole that you start to get yourself into when you really look at poison and all of the different ways that it's popped up throughout human history.
This is so cool. I mean, I love to use Datura flower essence to help process trauma, especially intergenerational trauma personally, and work through fear. Do you have a few specific poison plant allies that you really like to use, and why and how?
Datura is a really, really popular one. And, there are a variety of Daturas. Most of them native to North and South America, with one of the varieties, Datura Mattel, being native to the Indian subcontinent. They do exhibit, slight differences when it comes to their personalities, and I think part of that has to do with the sort of cultural lens that particular plant spirit has developed alongside, because we influence the plants as much as they influence us. So I think that kind of shapes their personality and their characteristics, because that's just a part of their origin story. But Datura in particular does seem to be one of the most popular ones. And like you mentioned, it's very good for breaking intergenerational trauma, unhealthy attachments, exploring ancestry, even getting into things like past lives and things like that. And I feel like so many of us kind of in this current generation are working on healing some of those ancestral wounds, which is something that Datura just seems to be very, very willing and able to help with. So that's one that gets used an awful lot. And then for me, as far as like working with them as allies in flower essence form, foxglove is probably the one that I work with the most. So foxglove in particular is really helpful for any kind of healing having to do with the heart. So whether that is like, getting out of a relationship, or healing a broken heart, or anything having to do with like emotions. It's also really, really good for empaths, or people that pick up on the emotions of other people, kind of strengthening and opening the heart at the same time to help people through various different healing processes. Because so many of those are tied to the heart and the emotions and kind of our boundaries, so we want to be able to go through that healing process and kind of give ourselves the space and the security to be able to do that, but also, still keep our hearts open so that we're able to receive the good things that have yet to come. And I think in a lot of cases when we are going through, difficult or traumatic healing processes, we sort of put up walls to protect ourselves that then kind of become a cage in the long run. So foxglove in particular really helps with that, to allow for the process, allow for the healing, but to also like keep the energy moving and keep it flowing, because we don't want to stay in that fight or flight state of mind, but keep that energy moving so that we can integrate and, move forward with the healing process. So for me, it's foxglove is my favorite to work with.
That's so lovely. I also just love how beautiful the flowers are. And I think it's really magical that we can work with things like flower essences, or even just meditate with the spirit of the flower to work with these things that we really shouldn't be putting in our mouths generally. And I think it reminds me how magical this work really can be. You don't even have to be literally with the plant to work with it.
Yeah, that's so true. And I think that is one thing that the plants associated with the poison path are really, really good at teaching us, is the fact that we don't have to have the physical plant right next to us, or we don't have to be like ingesting plant material, that we can connect with these spirits and their energies, in the same way that we would connect with any other type of energy, so it's no different than like working with the energy of the full moon, or devotional practice with a specific deity or an ancestor spirit. We've got all of these tools at our disposal to connect with these different energies. That plants are really no different. And I think the fact that, that we can eat them, and that we use them in medicine and in all of these other ways that we're putting them like in and on our bodies, we kind of get like tripped up on that physical aspect. But when we think about it from an animistic perspective, like these plants have such huge personalities and such interesting and amazing stories, that we can tap into that energy and that consciousness just through sort of that desire to connect.
Wait, I love this so much, and I will make a confession. If you did see the flowers that are behind me and when we're recording, and one of the flowers that I have, the faux flowers, is on recommendation of someone that I was doing ritual with, and they said you should buy X plant, and I could not find anything online because it is a poisonous plant. However, at a local pottery barn, they did have a faux version of that plant on clearance, and I was like, add to cart. I ran over and got it, and there is something very comforting when I'm doing ritual to just look at it and say, okay, I'm working with this plant ally. So I hope that counts for something.
Yeah, it absolutely counts. Yeah, it's no different than having like a statue of the goddess Hecate to connect with her. It's that imagery, and it's through that imagery and the shape and the colors and all of those different sensory cues that the plants communicate to us, like who they are as people. So having an image of a particular plant, or getting a tattoo of a plant that you really feel you have a connection to, it's that sort of affinity, that invisible cord that connects us to that particular spirit that is important. Not being able to grow it and harvest it and have its physical body kind of at our disposal. For being a green witch, I definitely feel like I have a black thumb, and so I always try and like remind people, like,
I love this. I'm sorry, that's so sweet. It's so sweet.
Yeah, but like it's so true. While I enjoy growing things when they flourish and when they want to grow, I'm a very like, do your own thing. Like if you're gonna grow, great. If not, great. Like I'm not gonna be over here with a little dropper, like tweaking the soil and shifting things around and trying to calibrate like the exact specific amount of light that you should receive on a Tuesday. Like just do your thing, and if you're gonna do it, that's awesome. If not, that's okay too. Like
This makes me feel so much better. Thank you. Because in my mind's eye, you are that person. Like you're in a little greenhouse and you have your little dropper and everything is so perfect and beautiful. So I will not ruin that fantasy in my own mind. But that is so helpful to hear that not all of us have to be the perfect green witch to participate in herbalism. Talk to me a little bit about something I am more familiar with. You have a background in cosmetology as well. So we love a crossover. We love talking about the intersection of worlds. How have poison plants featured in beauty rituals and products throughout history? And how might we be using them now or interacting with them now in that way?
Well, it's just really weird, like how in retrospect, everything kind of connects, and it's like you go through life and you do all of these different things, and you kind of look at them as their own separate thing, but then you get to a certain point and then you look back and you're like, wow, like that was all sort of like laying the ground and leading up to the place that I'm at now. And so this is kind of the perfect sort of example of that. So I worked in the beauty industry for, I think, about a decade. I'm a licensed cosmetologist, and then I worked as a beauty culture instructor at a beauty school for about 8 years, and I specialized in chemical services, color theory, a little bit of everything, to be honest. So I grew up in the beauty industry. My mom's also a cosmetologist, so it's just sort of always been part of my world. And then interestingly, like come to find out all of the sort of connection and crossover that there is, between like beautification practices or, beautification rituals, if we want to call them that, and magical practice and spell work and our ability to manifest things. It's just like I could probably write an entire book about that in and of itself. But, when it comes to cosmetics and poisonous plants or poisons in general, they they have a very extensive history, which I think is pretty interesting, and it says a lot about what we are willing to do to achieve the looks that we're wanting to achieve. So we see, I think, a little bit more poisonous mineral compounds in cosmetics and various different beauty products than we do actual plant compounds. So the one that I would say from the plant world would be deadly nightshade, or the plant also known as belladonna. Belladonna is said to get that name from the practice of Renaissance Italian women that would take the juice from the berries and put it in their eyes. They would do that because the chemical compound atropine, which is present in all members of the nightshade family, has what's called a mydriatic effect. So it dilates the pupils. It was actually at one point used in ophthalmology exams for the same reason, to dilate a person's pupils. But the idea behind that being that a person with dilated pupils was thought to, well, I mean, there's like a biological component to this too, because when a person is sexually aroused, their pupils will typically dilate. So I think subconsciously that translated into people with bigger pupils looked more sexually receptive and thereby more beautiful, kind of giving the person like that doe-eyed effect, which is maybe even where that saying came from. But they would take the juice from the deadly nightshade berries and put it in their eyes to dilate the pupils, and that's where the common name belladonna came from, because belladonna means basically beautiful lady or good lady. I haven't found like an actual historical source on where that specifically originated from, but that's kind of the saying with that. But cosmetics in general, since ancient times, have had all sorts of different poisonous compounds. So we have cinnabar, which is a mineral that is derived from toxic mercury, that was used in cosmetic preparations to give it the red color. So we know mercury is very toxic. I also see lead being used in a lot of different beauty products, from the lead and antimony that is found in different kohl eyeliner preparations that would have been used throughout North Africa, the Middle East, Southwest Asia, into the Mediterranean, as far as like lining the eyes with like that darker pigment. Those formulas often contained toxic minerals. And then all the way into, like the pre-modern era, the Renaissance, the Elizabethan period, different cosmetic preparations that were meant to give people a basically like a pale skin tone, or in a lot of cases to cover up like wounds and scars that were caused by smallpox. There was a cosmetic preparation that was called Venice Venice White or Venice. I can't remember the other name for it. But it basically had lead in it. And for a brief period of time, that would give the person a very pale and flawless kind of complexion, because that's what people were going for during that time. But it would also cause lead poisoning and lesions. Could cause the person's hair to fall out, and eventually, like they would die from lead poisoning. So basically, just a very slow way of poisoning themselves. So poison has been part of sort of our efforts to beautify for thousands of years, and it still hasn't gone away. When you think of like Botox is basically a toxin that we're using to paralyze our facial muscles to get rid of wrinkles. There used to be I think it was really popular. It was called Nerium. This was back when I was still in the beauty industry, but it was a skincare line. Yeah, Nerium Skincare. And I was looking into it because I recognized the word Nerium, and it's actually part of the Latin name for a plant that's called white oleander. So this facial line actually used an extract from this plant that's like extremely poisonous. And I'm sure like there was probably some kind of a process that made it so it wasn't, because it's being sold like any other cosmetic line. But just interesting that the extract from that particular plant was used in this beautification product. So it's like a whole nother rabbit hole that you can go down when it comes to like all of the different toxins that have been in cosmetics and beauty products, for thousands of years.
I get so fascinated by these things, probably because I'm slightly morbid. Like I was definitely the kid reading a collection of Poe when I was 9 in an old cemetery that I found in the woods. So I love this kind of thing where I'm like, oh, tell me everything weird. But there's also another little branch that we could look at with herbs and poison plant allies and cosmetics. Let's talk about glamour magic. So we have talked a little bit about glamour magic before on the show with Caitlin Foisey and a smattering here or there. But we always love to hear from your perspective. What is glamour magic, and how are these poison plant allies helpful?
Glamour magic is a lot of different things. I think that, we typically associate it with beauty or, some kind of an aesthetic quality. But glamour magic is essentially the projection of a specific stimuli to attract a desired effect. So that could be glamour magic to get a new job or get a promotion, by using glamour magic to make yourself be perceived as the most qualified person for the position. We could have glamour magic, which I think is like the more common association to attract a romantic partner, because that's more tied into like the more aesthetic side of glamour and beauty and appearance and attraction and influence. But we can also use glamour magic in sort of the opposite way, as a form of protection magic, casting an aura of, don't fuck with me, do not approach, like giving off these very like dangerous kind of vibes. So we can glamour in all sorts of different ways. The glamour is basically our projection of the specific type of energy that's going to bring in that desired effect. I think that glamour magic it's a very like individual practice, and I've kind of been like thinking about this all afternoon when we get into the topic of beauty standards and all that kind of entails. Glamour magic is a lot more than that. I think it has more to do with, personal empowerment. So in a way, we're kind of glamoring ourselves first before we glamour other people. So kind of like fake it till you make it, or convincing yourself of the thing that it is that you're trying to put out there before other people will believe it. There was a really interesting article that actually just popped up like over the past few days to my awareness that was put out on the Wild Hunt, and it was by Beatrice Kondo, and it's all about the Korean beauty products and kind of like the glass skin facial regimen within like the context of being kind of like a spell or a ritual that a person would perform. And it goes into the patriarchal aspects of different beauty standards and, capitalizing on self-care, which, used to be something that we practiced, not something that we purchased. So that's a really good article that kind of incorporates like glamour magic into like the cosmetic industry, and also, like fuck the patriarchy, anti-capitalistic sort of a way. So definitely check that out. But poisonous plants, bringing it back around, are, in my opinion, super effective for glamour magic. And I write about it a lot in my second book, The Poison Path Grimoire, because a lot of the plants that we consider poisonous, or sort of the main players on the poison path, specifically the members of the nightshade family, it's like deadly nightshade, datura, henbane, mandrake, have actually been used for their aphrodisiac effects for a very long time. And kind of even before their associations with European witchcraft and the witches' sabbats and all of these kind of diabolical things, through folklore and Christian superstition, they were all used for their aphrodisiac uses in various love potions and love filters. So while they do have this poisonous side to them, this darker side, they also have this very seductive, manipulative, and influential kind of a side to them too. So it makes them very powerful allies for glamour magic, regardless of the context, because they do have that sort of more demure Venusian aspect of, luring and attracting things in, but then they've also got this more like sadistic, Saturnian, BDSM kind of a vibe to them too. So for glamour magic of a variety of different purposes.
I am loving this naughty and nice combo that you are offering us. I'm taking a lot of notes. Are there any everyday poison plants that might be all around us, but we overlook them or take them for granted? How can we be more conscious of these relationships?
They're everywhere. Poison is everything and nothing all at the same time. So they're probably like right next to you or in your vicinity on a daily basis, and you don't really even realize it. A lot of the house plants that people are so in love with, that are so like aesthetic and Instagrammable, are actually poisonous to some degree. Not in the sense that they'll necessarily kill you, but the majority of them being inedible. So things like pothos, snake plant. We just had like the whole holiday season, so poinsettia is another one that kind of falls in that category. A lot of them, they'll just irritate your stomach or cause like really intense gastrointestinal issues, or give you like pins and needles in your mouth if you, for whatever reason, decide to start chewing on your houseplants. But they are, in a sense, poisonous in their own right as well. A lot of the things that we consider ornamentals, things that we grow in the garden just because they're pretty, they're not used as like a food source. Those are also poisonous, so it's like if we could eat it, then we probably would have incorporated it into agriculture and grown it as a food crop. So if we can't eat it, then we usually just grow it because it's pretty.
That's such a good point. I also love if we could eat it, we'd probably be eating it.
Mhm.
I'm really interested in story time. What's a gift that you've received from working with the plants? And feel free to tell us a story. And gift can be really anything. Interpret it any way you want.
Oh boy. Yeah, so the plants and I have a really interesting kind of relationship. We like to joke around with each other. They have given me an awful lot, but it's also, been me probably kicking and screaming most of the way. But here we go. Interestingly, sidebar, the word gift in English, which we typically associate with like a present or a blessing or, something that is given or bestowed upon us, in German actually means poison. So in German, Giftpflanzen means poisonous plant. So kind of an interesting connection, between this next question and our theme of poisonous plants, and that gift in one language literally means poison.
That's so cool. I had no idea.
Yeah, and that kind of parallels, every gift kind of comes with its price. Every gift is potentially a curse or a burden. Birthday presents aside, I'm talking more about like non-tangible gifts or things that we receive. All of that kind of comes with a price, and that's definitely been, kind of the theme with my work and journey with poisonous plants. It's sort of this ability to go into these really dark places and kind of navigate them to gain a deeper understanding. But I think the gift in that being the ability to pull yourself out of those places, which is kind of the most important part, because you don't want to get stuck in a really dark and nasty place. So the plants that I work with and sort of my work on the poison path in general has kind of been a long and continued journey of going into these darker places within myself and kind of processing things, working through things, holding space for different emotions or different, what we could call intrusive thoughts that are not necessarily the nicest things to sit with, but then sort of transmuting that into, something positive and something productive. A lot of what I talk about when it comes to, sort of my own personal experience and the work that I've been doing with these plants for, I think, close to a decade now, has been through my own journey in recovery from addiction to prescription opioids. So the plants that I work with, or the plant spirits specifically, have played a really large role in that sort of transformational process. But it's really, been a lot more than that too. It's just kind of, hollowed me out and honed me in a way that I'm able to kind of power through some of these more difficult experiences when it comes to, healing from trauma and dealing with grief and, processing, emotions, like not only for myself, but like for other people and for like the world at large, and just like, what the fuck do we do with like all of this rage that is like running through us at any given time, and just being able to kind of move those things around while still navigating in a human human body can be a pretty intense experience. So I think in a lot of ways they've acted as a support system with that.
Now that you're mentioning that, is there any plant or herb or floral essence that you would recommend for working with rage in these times? I think that could be helpful for a lot of people listening.
Yeah, I was just like, oh my God, why haven't I talked to poison plants about how America is super fascist? I
Oh my gosh,
I
yeah.
should be.
Oh, I just get goosebumps even thinking about it. Like the plants are just as angry as we are, and I'm like looking over at my henbane and my mandrakes right now. And they're like giving me the side eye. So, poisonous plants in general are very anti-patriarchal, anti-fascist. They're all about like breaking down all of these just outdated constructs that we exist in. From capitalism to like this glorification of masculinity, all of it. Sorry, I'm getting emotional and angry.
That's allowed. That's allowed for sure.
They're just it's so deeply woven into their nature and into their stories that it's hard to even like verbalize it. But like these, on the one hand, these plant spirits are very supportive and very healing, and wanting to carry us through like the dark times, not only like in our personal life but collectively. But on the other hand, these are very vicious warrior-like spirits that are capable of ripping us apart and literally killing us in a lot of cases. So they do have like this very, very vicious side to them. And they've been part of, sort of this undermining of these authoritarian regimes and structures and, social contracts that have existed for, like at least the past 2,000 years. The act of poisoning in particular being associated with women and marginalized communities, because it is literally the last resort weapon of the underdog and those that are the most oppressed and the most powerless. So it's like literally, like in a spiritual context, it is the antithesis of just like all of the shit that is going on in the world right now. And it kind of, in a really strange way, when my second book, The Poison Path Grimoire, came out, it was actually like the release date was the day after this past election. So it was like, last November 7th or whatever. And then reading through like the first couple chapters, first few pages of the book, it was like literally this kind of low-key battle cry against all of this. And I'm talking about all of these, different feminine figures throughout history and, popping up in mythology that have some kind of a connection to, poison, that in some way are now like these, feminist folk heroes, so like Medusa, for example, that fierce, feminine, monstrous kind of energy, turned outward to protect against, all of the atrocities kind of committed against that depiction of, feminine energy. And then Julia Tofana, who like literally poisoned over 600 men to help liberate the women married to those men from their unwanted conditions. Like these, they're literally like the vilified heroes of the story.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I'm so moved, and it's This is exactly why we wanted to talk to you. You have studied and embodied so many of these stories, and you have such close relationships with these plant spirits. And it's a beautiful practice if you are feeling called to it, to look into how, excuse me, how poison plants can be there to help you process, but also to help you fight the good fight, or, whatever else I call you to do.
Yeah, totally.
Actually, you have a new deck. I got caught up in that moment. You have a new deck too, the Poison Path Oracle. Can you tell us about your inspiration to create it, and how could people incorporate that into their practice? And feel free to do a little sample spread too if you want to share a reading with the listeners.
All right. So the Poison Path Oracle is my new deck that will be out in September. So that's September 2026. It's a 36 card Oracle deck that features 23 plant cards. So we've got different poisonous and baneful herbs that make up those 23 cards. So everything from deadly nightshade to plants like Venus flytrap that might not necessarily be poisonous by the definition, but have like some sort of a kind of an otherworldly or strange quality about them. And then 13 poisoner cards. So out of the 13 poisoner cards, these are all different figures throughout history and mythology that have some kind of a connection to poison or poisoning. So we've got Cleopatra, Catherine de' Medici, Julia Tofana, even the goddess Venus or Aphrodite. So all of these very ferocious and fierce feminine figures that have some sort of a poisonous element to them. So the special thing about this deck is that it looks at the concept of poison as medicine and medicine as poison. So it's a very commonly quoted saying that was originally said by Paracelsus, that poison is in the dose. So it's this idea that anything can be potentially harmful and anything can be potentially beneficial. So the deck kind of plays on that, and each card has kind of its general divinatory meaning. And then it also has a specific meaning for that particular card's poison and that particular card's medicine. So the poison would be, sort of the reversed meaning, or the more, quote, negative connotation, and then the medicine would be sort of, a more positive quality, or what can be achieved through transmuting that poison into something beneficial. So we're able to kind of draw from both of those when it comes to the meaning for each of those. And then I do have this kind of, a sample spread to give you an idea of what a reading with the deck looks like. And since it is an oracle deck, you can do like a single card draw and get meaning out of that. But then I've also come up with a couple of other spreads that kind of play on the unique qualities of the particular deck. So the spread that I have is called the Gate of Venus. This is a 5-card spread, makes up the shape of a pentagram. It's an inverted pentagram, so the point is pointing downward. So we've got 5 cards, and we're reading those cards horizontally as well as kind of collectively. So cards 1 and 2 go together, cards 3 and 4 go together, and then card 5, which is the point, is kind of the culmination. So for this sample spread, the question being, what can I expect from this new romantic relationship? And the cards that we draw are Cleopatra, Deadly Nightshade, Black Nightshade, Venus Flytrap, and Foxglove. So to interpret that, we would look at cards 1 and 2, Cleopatra and Deadly Nightshade, and see how they combine to give us our interpretation. So right away, we have Cleopatra and Deadly Nightshade coming together, telling the querent to be ready to walk away. Deadly Nightshade is warning of misguided infatuation and a need to look within and ask oneself why you are in this relationship in the first place. What seems comfortable is not always what is best for us, and it is all too easy to use romantic relationships to distract ourselves from the unresolved personal issues within. So it's a very, like, sometimes the deck hits kind of hard. It says things that people might not want to hear, but I think that's kind of the point of a poison plant deck, is that it's not always going to be, super fluffy and gentle. It's going to, give us like cold, hard truths in a lot of cases.
I love that. I really do, because I do love an oracle deck, and I love a warm, fuzzy oracle deck, but that is my critique of using them exclusively, is that sometimes they don't get you to that cold, hard truth.
Yeah, I do. I feel like a lot of oracle decks are very like fortune cookie. You will have good luck and everything is going to be in your highest good and all work out if you believe it. So, and this is not that deck. So real quick, next we have cards 3 and 4, which is Black Nightshade and Venus Flytrap. Black Nightshade is a warning of the danger of repeating past patterns and being willfully ignorant to the lessons of previous relationships. It is presenting this relationship as an opportunity to finally realize and change those patterns. Venus Flytrap shows up here to remind the querent to be patient both with themselves and with the timing of this relationship. Rushing into things too quickly without addressing these old patterns as they pop up will hinder the growth of the relationship. Timing is everything here, and having patience is going to pay off in the long run. And then finally, Foxglove. While patience, understanding, and clear communication are going to be absolutely necessary in this relationship, Foxglove appears to say that if you can stay open and vulnerable while communicating difficult things to your partner, you will both have the opportunity for immense heart healing, which will in turn strengthen your relationship. Overall, this reading is telling the querent to let go of any attachment and expectation. With that willingness to potentially walk away. So to be recklessly vulnerable. By being willing to recognize past patterns and address them openly with this new partner, you will both be able to grow into a healthy and balanced relationship together. Sometimes we have to be willing to lose the very thing we desire in order to allow our most authentic selves to act without fear. So that's kind of the gist of that reading.
Yeah, I love how practical it is too, because it's not doom and gloom. It's like, let's get real and see what you can look at to grow and improve. That's beautiful. Very, very poison medicine kind of energy.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you.
What tools and practices do you lean on in your own personal divination or when you're reaching for self-care practices?
So I'm like notoriously resistant. Like I'm the one that will, hear the voices for days and days and days and refuse to, burn any incense, or like that's probably like exactly what I need to do. Is
maybe
like,
you need some of that poison medicine for yourself. You need to hear, stop repeating those patterents. Give yourself some love. I'm like fire stellium, it's a wonder that when I look at my natal chart that the screen doesn't just like burst into flames because there's so much fire in it. So when it comes to like self-care, personal practice, I try and incorporate like as much of the water element as possible, because that's usually what I'm lacking or what I need to kind of like temper the flames. So I do, like a lot of
ritual bath type situations. I also, I guess I sit in the sauna a lot too, which you wouldn't think of being like associated with the water element, but because you're sweating and actually like moving that water through your body and kind of like intentionally focusing on releasing different emotions, different thought processes that kind of get stuck in your head. For me, like the past year or so, I was just like trying to figure out what to do with all of my anger that kind of comes out of nowhere and is not necessarily even mine, but it's there. So working with the water element in different ways has become really helpful for that. When it comes to divination, I do more divination for other people than I do for myself. For me, since I work at home and I spend so much time basically on my own with the company of like the few plants that I have here, like I'm constantly surrounded in my work. So there is a lot of, spiritual chatter that kind of goes on throughout the entirety of the day. So I've kind of learned how to really like tap into that when it comes to, I guess, like divination or intuiting things for, like my own personal life trajectory and what I'm doing. So basically, kind of channeling plant spirits as a form of divination.
I love that. I can really relate to doing a lot of divination for other people and being immersed in the chatter of spirits. And I've been trying to more mindfully reroute a little bit of that energy for myself. It's
Mm-hmm.
um I'm so excited to be in your Botanica Obscura Conference, March 6th to 9th. And so if listeners have been following along and are like, oh my God, I need to learn more, this is a really good opportunity. Actually, isn't it March 5th to 9th? Did I get those dates wrong?
I think it's the 6th until the 8th.
Oh, 6th into the 8th. Okay.
Yeah.
So can you please tell us about this event and how listeners can join? I'll be presenting on Romani resistance in weeds and family herbal lore, so I'm pumped.
Yeah. We're super excited to have you. So the Botanica Obscura Conference is a completely online virtual event, live and recorded. We have it every year. This is going to be the 5th year. So we'll have over 30 different presenters offering a very wide range of topics, all of them plant and fungi related. So we've got, clinical herbalists, alchemists, magical practitioners, various different folk practices, ancestral traditions being offered. So really something for everybody if you are interested in learning more about plant-based spiritual practices or just herbalism in general. We've got Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So you can sign up for the entire weekend, or if you just want to pop in for one day, I've got those options. You can look at the whole lineup and the descriptions of all of the presentations at botanicaobscuraconference.com. And that will then route you over to my website, thepoisonersapothecary.com, where you can grab tickets.
This is so cool. I'm really excited for you guys. Coby, what else do you have coming up on the horizon besides the conference?
Oh, well, my next book will be out at the end of March. So that is called The Poison Path Oracle. That is focused on divination, spirit communication, and trance work, working with the plants of the poison path. So at the beginning of the presentation, we mentioned the word entheogen. So an entheogen is basically a plant or fungi that is able to alter consciousness in ways that allow us to connect with spirit, to connect with the divine, to tap into our intuition. So the Poison Path Oracle is basically focused on that. And then I think in May, I've got another book coming out that is called Herbal Magic for Dummies. So if you are new to...
You can say it if you're a dummy, like Jess. I'm self-professed. It's okay.
So I'm right there with you. Written by a dummy for dummies. So it's a very practical approach to herbal magic outside of any kind of spiritual context. So sort of regardless of what your spiritual background or your beliefs, I try to present it in a way that is practical and approachable and something that anybody can benefit from. So that'll be out sometime in May. And then I think that's about it for the foreseeable future, other than the Oracle deck, which comes in September.
Yeah, that's a lot of fun things to look forward to. Can't wait. And how can people best find you and support your work or work with you?
You can find me on social media at Poisoner's Apothecary. And you can also check out my website, which is thepoisonersapothecary.com. I do have a Patreon. You can check that out at patreon.com/poisonersapothecary. There's a few different tier options on there if you're wanting to dive a little bit more deeply into the poison path and occult herbalism.
Thank you so much for chatting with us. It was so much fun to delve into your perspective on these things, and we just really appreciate you sharing this with our listeners.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you guys for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us in the immaterial world. While you're here, we hope you subscribe, rate, and review us on your favorite streaming services. The real magic is in connection and community. Share your favorite episode with friends and come follow us for more on Instagram at Immaterial World Pod and Patreon at patreon.com/Immaterial World.
Shining, tell me all your dreams. You're a special kind of magic. Show me all your favorite things. You're pretty like a sunset. You're pretty like a pearl. You're a special kind of magic, dancing in a crazy swirl. In a crazy swirl. Immaterial world, come meet me in the immaterial world. As far as the galaxy goes, we're flying in the immaterial world. Immaterial world, come meet me in the immaterial world. Your mind, your body and soul, delighted in the immaterial world. The immaterial world. The immaterial world.
Immaterial World is hosted by Jessica Richards and Jasmina Von Hila. Music and editing by Dia Luna. Artwork by Lane Friend. Follow Immaterial World Pod on Instagram and Patreon at patreon.com/immaterialworld. You can visit our website at www.immaterial-world.com or email us at immaterialworldpod@gmail.com. Thank you for being part of our immaterial world.
Welcome to the immaterial world.